I'm going to be turning the background noise off for this video for the most part. So here's how it sounds initially. Could maybe just stay with this. We're just going to go without music for this one at all, because I think in the future, if I do have a background music, for whatever reason, I went completely carried away with background sound for the previous creepypasta videos. By the way, it was either between this thumbnail or this as a background. So we'll go with this one. I'm actually going to reread parts 63 through 67. I'll try to read them fairly quickly. So, these will be the stories: The Composer of the Unknown, The Cursed Brass Bell of Trustville, The Hangman, The Study, and The Eighth Shrine. So this will be a rereading of all these stories because well, actually, I think most of them you could understand. But, yeah. We'll do a rereading of that stuff. So, back to creepypasta.com. We'll just go in order again. Starting with The Composer Unknown, and of course this is technically not unrehearsed anymore because I just read these for videos about an hour ago or something. Though I do need to go to sleep since I'm working quite a bit of overtime. But hey, that's what plenty of Red Bull and my multiple alarm clocks are useful for. So I can ignore sleep a little bit, I think. Anyway, The Composer of the Unknown by Jacob B. A mild night in the New England countryside. An empty field with an omnipresence of untrimmed grass and wild weeds left to grow unabated. The field is surrounded by a lumbering audience of trees. The moon casts its glows of judgment. I got lost for a second, I'm sorry. The dim light graciously cast is swallowed by a carpet of fog on the grassy floor. The moon illuminates a young man, sitting on an old, long-forgotten crate. Though the man is young, he appears aged and shriveled. His once astute posture eroded into a hunch. His once vibrant and eager eyes were now tired and strained. He wears an old ragged fisherman's coat, dotted with off-color red patches from the previous patchwork. You're wondering, I'm trying to push the Son of a bitch! I'm trying to close the advertisements that keep popping up! But I was trying to read at the same time, and apparently I can't function like that. I'm sorry. Poking out from under his coat in an old faded pair of jeans with the bottom. If you ever hear me angrily grunt, it's me getting pissed at an advertisement. Old pair of duck boots. The man holds his head in his hand, using his leg to prop up his arm, as Lunar D8's phone keeps propping up more advertisements. His other hand runs through his short hair, then traces his orange stubble beard. He looks down to his side, eyeing the rifle and lantern he had brought. The lantern's flame is extinguished. Instead of holding a young flame, it holds emptiness. For without its flame, it is useless, almost as if an allegory for the man. The man reaches into one of his coat pockets and pulls out an old tarnished locket. He doesn't open it, he just clenches it in his fist, while his brow furrows and his eyes clench, reciting memories in his head, some that make him laugh, some that make him angry, some that make him giddy, but they all lead here. They all lead to this field. The best of stories' conclusions take place where they all started, back to the beginning. But life in all actuality is not a story fabricated by an author who possesses the power to turn words into brilliant tragedies and comedies. Yet the man is here. Clouds cover the moon. The once timid light has been completely retracted, and the earth is left in complete darkness. The man is pulled from his stupor by a faint sound, a beautiful sound of classical strings, reminiscent of Beethoven, gingerly penetrates the man's hearing. The music slowly grows somewhat louder as the man makes out a dim light in the tree line. The man, almost startled, slowly gets up from his resting place. He reaches down and picks up his rifle with caution. The light slowly emerges from the foggy tree line with the background drum of classical music. There are supposed to be no houses or buildings for 16 miles of this field. As the light slowly wafts toward him, the man can make out the rough outline of a human figure. But the figure does not move. It seems to glide. It moves in such an elegant manner, graceful almost, accompanied by soothing sound of classical music. The man is almost paralyzed, like he's under the spell, unable to move. Under a spell. All he can do is watch as the angelic-like life figure ever so slowly moves toward him. Within 30 yards, the man can somewhat see the figure more clearly. It is reminiscent of a woman, one that looks familiar, although she is no woman. As she approaches, she becomes more clear. Her face is grotesque, as if someone tried to replicate a human face, but didn't truly know what a human face looks like. Her arms are long and bony, unnaturally long, bent in ways they shouldn't bend. Her eye sockets are empty, devoid of the most human feature. In their wake, there leaves an empty abyss of nothing, a horrifying nothing. The music was still accompanied by her, growing ever louder the closer she drew. You know, if I was going to play music, maybe it should have been Beethoven's Moonlit Sonata. That would actually, since I actually know what to expect this time around. Heck, that Hangman's story, that actually had me crying a little bit. Just a little. The man's breathing escalates. His heart starts to palpate with fear. Everything should be telling him this is safe. The soft and calming music, the comforting glow in a sea of darkness. But the man knows better. The creature stops 20 feet from the man, allowing him to make it out in all its horrifying beauty. She's so close the man can clearly make out the song that she admits, Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. Then, like a dying fire, her luminescent glow begins to fade until it's out completely, but the music still remains. The hauntingly beautiful melody gingerly pierces his ears. It penetrates his most inner and sacred thoughts. It engulfs him. The only audible noise that can be heard is the classical melody. But a new noise quietly erupts, a soft yet undeniable sound, the sound of leaves crunching. Then again, and again, the sound can be heard. The crunching remains continuous, almost methodical in its delivery. The man counts at least 12 steps in total. A lone tear begins to run down the man's cheek, only a singular tear. But this tear is not the tear found from joy or sadness. This tear comes from anxiety, loneliness, and fear. The only action his body can muster, not an action to fight or to run, but one of repressive dread. Out of the darkness comes an audible sound, a word, a name, Michael. But the way it's spoken, in such an unnerving manner, as if a dying woman spoke while inhaling. Actually, what if I try? I actually can't do it. I don't think I can make that sound. I did do a let's play of the game Slay the Princess. Well, it's a demo, but it took like 4 hours. It's a horror game, so yeah, I'm sure there's funny reactions. As if a dying woman spoke while inhaling, a feeble yet terrifying delivery. The word caused the man to break from his lull, like an old sleeping dog woken from his seemingly endless nap. The man quickly turns around and runs towards the woods, rifle in hand. His boots pound across the grassy floor, one after the other like two cars racing each other. The lead constantly changing. The music still follows him, though. He can't escape it. He finally reaches the tree line. He runs into the forest, hoping it to be a safe haven. An area the creature won't follow or will lose him in. an area where he can be free, where the past of the creature won't haunt him, yet he can still hear the music. As he runs through the forest, the trees look down on him, casting their gazes of judgment like an unamused audience, watching a single beleaguered actor desperately try and save his one-man show. As he runs, he passes nothing but trees and bush, no animals or any living presence that he can detect, as if the forest was from a different time, a time long before man's interruption of nature. He runs seemingly forever until he can run no longer. His body begins to ache. It calls for him to stop. But he won't relent, not while he can still hear the music, even as it fades. He runs until only the sound that can be heard is the orchestral thud of his boots against the ground. In his desperation and exhaustion, he comes upon a large, old, decayed oak tree in the middle of the woods. It sits atop a small hill in the minuscule clearing in the woods, like the centerpiece of a once... I remember saying it was decadent, but it's more like decadent? I don't know. Display that has been forgotten to time and left to decay. Its trunk is massive as its rotted gray branches jut out of the arms of the desperate man, like the arms of a desperate man reaching out for salvation. Finally, at last, he's escaped the sound of the music. The man falls to his knees before the hill, utterly exhausted. Deep within himself, he finds the last saps of strength as he ascends the indomitable hill. Though it is not steep nor high, it's a challenge nevertheless for a fatigued man only fueled by fear. Though fear is the most potent, the most driving emotion a man can feel, it can cause the most rational man to act in the most irrational and erratic manner. But it can also act as fuel to an exhausted body and mind, as the last driving force. Upon his ascension, the man sits and rests against the belly of the tree, leaning his head back and closing his eyes for a minute. The moon once again peers its head. I wonder if that's supposed to be peer. Its head around the clouds, casting dim rays of light on the man and his surroundings. The man takes a deep breath as he opens his eyes and punctiliously examines his surroundings, ever looking for the creature to see if he truly escaped or if his ears had played a cruel and untimely joke on him. Only now does he realize the expressionless beauty of the forest, like paintings from the Renaissance, beautiful images of an endless landscapes unscathed by man, perfect yet flawed. But the flaws only add to its beauty, like the placement of this tree in the forest. As the man rests his aching body against a lonely tree, an all too familiar sound can be heard faintly in the distance. Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. Yeah, you think I would have that song playing right now, since I at least know what to expect this time. By Jacob B. Like I said, I'm doing a rereading of these things, as I went way too excessive with the way I had background. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. So... but I at least want to keep those videos just to be like, yeah, this is just the terrible attempts I make at making a video. Anyway, The Cursed Brass Bell of Trustville. J. W. Smithworth. The following is the history of the Brass Bell of Trustville. As I have come to understand it, I am remiss to admit that I have not been able to determine its origin, nor do I know of how it came to reside in the rural farmhouse inherited by Daniel Hopkins in 1867. While typically I would continue my investigation of the item, before parting with it I have begun to hear ringing at night, and fear that I will soon suffer further symptoms if I do not part with the cursed thing. That said, its history is as follows. The bell's first victim, Daniel Hopkins, 1842 to 1869. Cause of death, suicide. In June of 1867, Daniel Hopkins inherited a rural farmhouse in Trustville, Alabama, from his grandparents. Reports indicate nothing abnormal regarding his parents' passing, but I have not been able to ascertain specific cause of their death. At the time, Daniel was the owner of a small carpentry business and a prominent member of the community. He had been happily married for 6 years and had 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl. Although he owned a lovely home, after inheriting the farmhouse he began spending nights away from his family. These nights away became more and more frequent. By November of 1868, Daniel was spending weeks at a time alone at the farmhouse. He had grown distant from his family and stopped operating his business altogether. His wife Sarah wrote that his face had grown gaunt and sallow, that he had lost weight, and that he constantly complained of headaches, for which he had blamed an incessantly ringing bell, which nobody else ever heard. In December of 1868, Daniel was found dead in the farmhouse. He had hung himself in the guest room, the same room which just so happened to house the brass bell. The bell's second victim, Timothy Hopkins, 1863-1870. The cause of death apparent suicide. Timothy Hopkins was 6 years old at the time of his father's suicide. In her diary, Sarah Hopkins noticed that her son had taken the brass bell for himself, and that he had kept it on his nightstand. She did not appear to think anything abnormal of the bell. She writes that Timothy began to spend most of his time alone in his room. He became moody and easily agitated, and he began to complain of headaches. Sarah attributed this change in his behavior to her husband's passing. Her child was struggling with the death of his father, as any child would. Sarah's diary notes that he complained of a ringing bell, and that he frequently spoke of a gray lady whispering to him in his sleep. 3 months after his father's death, 6-year-old Timothy was found dead outside his family home. The boy had leapt from his bedroom window in the middle of the night. The bell's third victim, John Tamber, 1848-1884, cause of death, suicide. I feel like any emotional reaction I have to this is severely lessened because the fact that I've already read these stories, and that also that I'm really tired and I should have been asleep hours ago. And if I go to bed now, I might get a couple hours of sleep before pulling another long shift, and then another long shift, another long shift at work. So maybe I should care more about my own health. But if there's anything I'm really good at, it's ignoring that. To John Tamber, a neighbor. I think I missed words. After the passing of both her husband and her son, Sarah Hopkins lived as a widow and a single mother in Trussville for many years. Her daughter married in 1882 and moved into her husband's home. And Sarah remarried in 1884 to John Tamber, a neighbor. I know one of the videos earlier, I coughed for about 2 minutes straight. I was really out of breath after that. Once the two moved in together, her husband became distant and began suffering from the same symptoms as her first husband and her departed son. The incessant ringing of a bell, headaches, and the voice of a gray woman whispering to him at night. That very year, Sarah Hopkins found her husband dead, hanging from the same rafters in the farmhouse as her first husband. On the nightstand, inexplicably, was the brass bell. This is when Sarah in her diary first writes the bell is cursed. She left the item in the farmhouse, where she swore to never return. Sarah Hopkins died of natural causes in her home in June of 1911. The bell's fourth victim, Ashton Montclair, 2001-2016. Cause of death, suicide. After the passing of Sarah Hopkins' second husband, the farmhouse in rural Trussville obtained a reputation of being haunted, and I am very lightheaded. The property became stigmatized and remained untouched for over a century. In October of 2016, 15-year-old Ashton Montclair broke into the abandoned farmhouse with his girlfriend. As later reported by his girlfriend, they were becoming intimate when he suddenly turned pale and became frantic. He asked her if she had heard a bell and became transfixed on the upstairs guest room. When she went to check on him, she found Ashton dead, having cut his own throat. The bell's fifth victim, Stuart Bonham, 1991 to 2020. Apparent cause of death, suicide. In January 2020, a home inspector was assessing the farmhouse when he discovered the dead body of Stuart Bonham, a homeless man who had criminal history of substance abuse. Bonham had hung himself in the same room as the others. Many years ago I had heard the tale of a haunted farmhouse in Trussville, Alabama. I drank some of this water jug. But only this year found the time to visit. I was in the guest room when I noticed the brass bell, sitting quietly on the guest room nightstand collecting dust. Locals argue that the farmhouse is haunted. That is what mysteriously took the lives of those 5 poor souls. However, I am of the opinion that is the brass bell, which carries the curse. I took the trinket for myself, as always, excited to discover its secrets. As noted previously, I do not know from where the brass bell originates, why the men around it heard ringing, or who the Grey Lady might be, but the coincidences are uncanny. I hate to part with the artifact before I learn more, but I must admit I have not been sleeping well these past few months, and sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear a faint ringing in my study. Thank you for reading this tall tale, and I wish you all the best. Sincerely, J.W. Smithworth. Okay, next story, once it loads. The Hangman. It's scary how times have changed. Those we thought invincible taken away without so much as a fight. The world feels a little colder. One moment, the ads got so big that I can't see the words anymore. The world feels a little colder these days. Well, at least to me. I miss my mum. I would do anything to have her back, to just sit here with me on these cold steps, looking up through the railway tracks, talking about how our days went, to feel her warm touch and soft hug. These thoughts bombard me as I wipe a lonely tear from my right eye. The desperation in my soul is palpable. I stay out late. That seems to be the new normal for me. You do see a lot of interesting things in the dead of night, although I will admit everything seems a little more sinister in the dark. Then again, I think strange people take advantage of the fact to blend in. Grandma worries about me. She stays up, watching the news, probably afraid I'll end up there some night. Out here at times you can feel the energy change, and you just know it's going to be a weird night. Fortunately, I have my pepper spray, rape alarm, and my newly acquired flick stick. God help the creep who comes at me. As I was saying, the energy changes at times, and tonight was just like that. It never changes my plans. I do my ritual. I go and sit under the railroad tracks, put in my headphones, and let my thoughts wander. I spend on time looking at this picture I have of me and my mum. The picture is worn and looks like she is fading out of it. Very eerie. But I guess that's fitting for this city, and for this time of night. It's symbolic of how I'm clinging to her memory, or rather the memories I have of her. Who thought grief was this hard? Now I know why people say that they would rather go first, and how people die of a broken heart. Anyway, I take my seat on the cold steps, and look up through the tracks to see the night sky. I'm surprised that I can see a few stars. Normally you can't see anything due to the light pollution here. I put my earphones in and release a large sigh as I begin my night of internal turmoil. Laying here listening to soothing Debussy on the piano, I can hear arguing from across the street. Seems like a few street drinkers have fallen out and are shoving one another. The group they are with quickly breaks it up. They moved on down a bit. Sad to see people like that forced onto the streets because of addiction. But I'm just glad they moved away. I don't really have a sense of time. When I'm on this spot, and before I realize it, it's close to 3 a.m., I lift my backpack and make my way home. I always pass under the old Hangman's Bridge. It's a shortcut to Grandma's, so I always go by here. In the middle of the morning, it virtually deserted. It's an eerie sight. The old brick obscured by thick green moss and other plant life growing from the cracks. It's a historic monument in bad need of maintenance. But that's local councils for you. Never eager to preserve anything unless it costs less than their holidays to Spain. Anyway, I'm passing under the archway. I hear a notification on my phone. Reaching into my coat, I pull it out. The screen, a light from the new message. Received, I can see that it's a voice note on WhatsApp. But it must be an old notification only coming through, because it says it's from my mom. She's been dead for nearly a year now. I open my phone and just stare at the voice note, then suddenly text appear saying that the single word, listen. I swallow hard as my anxiety sends my heart racing. I'm terrified, but I can't ignore it, so I press play. At first all I hear is a rustling, like someone walking through a pile of leaves. Then, Sammy, Sammy, I'm so glad I can get this message to you. I miss you so much. My eyes were filled with tears. I actually were filling with tears the first time I read this. As they descend my face, another text message appears. This time, the word is speak, clearly indicating for me it is to return a voice note. I hold record on the chat, but I can't speak. I don't know what to say. I write back I can't speak and start running home, the tears still spilling from my eyes. I'm terrified, but before reaching the door, I stop to catch my breath. I need to collect myself, or Grandma will know something is wrong. Then I'll have to lie to her. What else would I do? Tell her the truth? That her daughter, my mother, has contacted me from the grave? No. I don't understand what has happened, but I can't put her in that position. She has grieved enough. I managed to collect myself. My eyes could still give me away. It just depends on our interaction. I put my hand on the door and press down slowly. The latch clicks and the door is open. I can hear the TV. She must have fallen asleep in front of it. I'll have to wake her up. I approach from behind. Her head is slumped over. I reach out with my hand to touch her shoulder. As I do, she jerks, scaring us both. Wow, Grandma, you made me jump out of my skin. She puts her glasses on. Maybe you shouldn't be lurking around at this hour. I remember having a lot more of an emotional reaction to everything. I think it's also because I'm really, really, really tired and about to pass out. I wouldn't have scared your ass. I smile and she simply smiles back and kisses me on the cheek and says goodnight. But then again, this gives a different type of what's it sound like when a very sleep-deprived person is supposed to be asleep and is reading stuff a little too quickly. I don't know. I definitely recommend to people to read stuff themselves too, but I am... okay, I need to at least try to reread these things. The voice note is corrupted. I can't open it again. I need to find out what's going on and if I can get in contact with her again. I wake up to the familiar sound of my alarm going off. I take my time checking my phone, flicking through Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Ah, there she is. Crystal is trying to video call me, and Crystal and me and Crystal have been friends from nursery school. I love her like a sister. I answer the call as quickly as I recognize it. Hey, Bubbles Beep. Her cute and sometimes annoying nickname for me. Hey, babe, what you up to? I reply. Crystal continues to tell me about her morning and about the cute guy she just met at the coffee house downtown. His name is Joshua, and he is quite interesting. She is like a love-struck teen. I'm out of energy. I have nothing more I can give for today. I will continue the story, possibly even restart it tomorrow, maybe. Or maybe just pass out as soon as I get home. I'm just too tired.